Welcome to the very first podcast by The Way of the Leaf, a reread discussion podcast based on the epic fantasy series The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. My name is Ryan, and I am currently knuckling my lower back.
And my name is Daniel. I am the drunken peddler, also known as Brother Dan, because we are indeed actual brothers.
We are.
We are.
The Way of the Leaf.
Yay! And this is the LeafCast. Yay!
This is our inaugural run. First and foremost, we are doing a reread. All right, so we have each read this series only once, and this will be our second go-round. We will go chapter by chapter till the very, very end. And if one or both of us somehow gets diagnosed with a rare blood condition a la Robert Jordan, we have already sent all of our notes, copious notes, to Brandon Sanderson, who has agreed to carry on the tradition and give you the weekly podcast we are promising.
Thank you, Brandon. You're a good guy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everyone knows this.
So good.
And we're tight. And we're tight. You know, we're tight. Brandon and The Way of the Leaf. After that, Tavern Talk, we're going to just talk about the series throughout from beginning to end, our lives, the Amazon TV series that's coming out. And I have a lot to say about that. And we are going to do this weekly.
I remember going up and visiting you in Santa Cruz, California, and leaving there with probably 7 or 8 really kind of ragged paperback books of this whole series. I think it was Crossroads of Twilight that a friend of mine and I went to a book signing with Robert Jordan, bought the book, and although that's not a favorite within the series, it kind of has a special place in my heart because he signed it for me. So that's the one time I got to meet the storyteller himself. This series means a lot to me. It means a lot regarding our relationship, I think, Ryan, and hopefully this podcast is kind of going to reflect that.
Oh, I'm gushing. My story is that I was in college living with a roommate. He basically, he sat me down and he was holding this weird book and he goes, "Ryan, please, I need you to read this one book." And then he handed me The Eye of the World, and I looked at the cover and I honestly thought my friendship with this person might end because the cover is just horrifying to me.
You're like, "Son, I really appreciate your opinion generally, and I'm told to not judge a book by its cover, ...
Oh goodness, that does not apply to this series.
And little did you know that was one of the better covers of the series.
I know. First off, have we discussed this? I don't think it's a spoiler to admit that there are more than one book. Are we spoiling it for the listener when we discuss that there are even other books?
No, not at all. Not at all. Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
There
please message us if
we ruined the story for you by you knowing that there's more books beyond The Eye of the World. We will take that on the chin. We will nod and say you're right, and we'll move on together.
In our minds, we have first-time readers, and then we got the vets. We love our first-time readers. We respect you guys. That's the level of care that we're going to take to the spoiler-free section, which we are in right now. I just wanted to make sure.
Keep it. No, let it be no mistake that we respect. We respect the idea that people don't want to hear about things that they are hoping to read about later. We're just going to evaluate the chapter as it's written, and then after some funky music provided by Homunculus Rex, we are going to then go into the tavern talk where our lips are loose and
loose. We have loose Theron lips.
All right. So speaking of loose Theron,
all right,
we are here to talk about the prologue to Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World. Someone's walking around a palace that is completely tore up. There's scorch marks on the ceiling and on the walls. There's tapestries that are burned and ripped. The walls of the castle are cracked and have light streaming through them. And a man is walking through as the ground is still very occasionally shaking from after rumbles from a big earthquake or some sort of a cataclysmic event. A man is walking around and he's stepping over just dead bodies, seeming not to even notice them. And he's calling for his wife. His wife's name is
Ilyena!
Ilyena. Ilyena, he's calling. He's calling for Ilyena and he's calling for his children. Even though there's dead people everywhere, there's fire still burning in the corners, I'm imagining. Stone is still kind of falling from the ceiling. Dust is in his hair. His hands are all grimy. His shirt's all tore up. And he's calling for his wife, like, hey, baby, where are you? Hey, and he's calling for his kids. He's like, hey, yo, who's, are you guys playing a game or is this hide and seek? Come on out. He's oblivious to everything that's around him, as we can see. And as he's walking down the hallway, he sees a mirror and he sees his own reflection and he looks at it. His laughter, trickles down the lifeless hallways. And then the air behind him shimmers and coalesces, and out steps a man he's wearing all black except for the white fine lace around his throat. He has a nice pointed beard. He has thigh-high boots that are tucked down to his knee. Yeah, no, everything about him just screams fashion. His long overcoat. He has his boots tucked down. He has silver trim on his boots. He's walking fastidiously around the dead bodies, moving his cloak as not to get any blood.
I think he opened up for Nine Inch Nails as a solo act.
I thought, I kind of pictured him more as a late 2000s Vegas magician.
Okay.
Like Chris Angel, perhaps.
It really depends on how big that collar is. If it's really comically large, then yes, we're going Vegas.
If you told me that this person who steps through, who we are told his name is Ilan Morin Tetranai, if this person had really heavy eyeliner on underneath his eyes, I wouldn't be surprised.
This man was walking, calling for his wife. Shockingly enough, the ground is heaving underneath him, and he is just what it's written. He's deftly walking, and I think that's the most comical like image in my head as he's just like calmly going around and his legs are just like buckling around like he's on a bucking bronco or something, but it's not even affecting him.
He's doing the river dance. His head is not moving at all, but his legs are just going crazy like an Irish fesh.
Irish jig, river dance, ragdoll physics. Put it all together. That's what I'm picturing, but with a very calm face.
Tossed in with like a little Tony Hawk, would you? Just shredding the gnar.
And also, Dan, we didn't even plan it, and I yelled Ilyena at the perfect time. Just telling you, we're locked in. Keep going. And go.
So
and go.
And action. Ilan Morin comes in is so typical bad dude. It's kind of awesome. I mean, the first thing he says is, Lord of the Morning, I have come for you.
He's chatty too. Let's just point out he is a chatty man.
Yeah. So he sees this guy, the man is Luz Theron Telamon. Luz
Theron, tell it all.
Tell me, Luz Theron, tell me more.
Yes, this chapter is just full of information, and it's really odd because people are just talking to each other.
No, so what we learn is that Luz Theron has had a history with this man, has defeated him a couple times. That he straight out like says, you got me here, but I got you now. Blah, blah, blah. He says, look at you. Once you stood first amongst the servants, once you wore the ring of Tamerlane and sat in the high seat, once you summoned the 9 rods of dominion. Now look at you, a pitiful, shattered wretch. This defeat into the nose of a madman, and Lews Theron is still saying, "Oh, hey, stranger. Have you the voice? Oh, hey, Ilyena, bring some sandwiches. Come on. Where, Ilyena, she's gonna talk your ear off. Trust me. But hey, she's a nice girl. Ilyena, and he's just." he's just calling and kind of giving these gentle ribs about his wife. And Elan Morin is looking at him like, "Oh, I see. You are nutso." And so he says, "Okay, I really can't have my moment of victory with you being a crazy person. I need you to know that I win. I win. I win." And so and so he uses the Dark One's power to heal Lews Theron temporarily of his madness that he's going through. The method seems devastatingly painful. Lews Theron is racked with pain. It seems that 1,000 years pass before he can even open his eyes, and 1,000 years more before he can even crawl around. But he finally gets his bearings and notices that all around him are the corpses of everyone he has known, everyone he has loved. Apparently, they were all gathered in this palace, and they're all dead around him. And as Lews Theron was like dodging earthquakes and stepping over his dead wife, now he is staring at her and has full awareness that she is dead. He looks over, his kids are dead, everyone's dead, and it hits him as it rightfully should. And his howls scream down the hallways. He looks at Elan Morin and says, what you have done to Ilyena. And he goes, "What? Look around. This was you, kinslayer." And he calls them kinslayer, which it's a pretty devastating term to use on a guy who's stepped over his own wife to to get to him. But he calls him kinslayer and makes Lews Theron aware of just what has been done by his own hand. Lews Theron has this awareness, and instead of lashing out at Elan Morin, he travels, and we next see him in a location that he does not quite know where he's at, but he knows that he is at least 100 miles from any other living person. And we're not told how he knows this information, but we do trust it to be true. In his grief, and I'd like to point out Lews Theron's first words. His first word is Ilyena. Ilyena, my love, he calls. And his last word is also Ilyena.
This is the last passage of Dragonmount. Light, forgive me. He did not believe it could come, forgiveness. Not for what he had done. But he shouted to the sky anyway, begged for what he could not believe he could receive. Light, forgive me! He was still touching Sidon, the male half of the power that drove the universe, that turned the wheel of time, and he could feel the oily taint fouling its surface, the taint of the shadow's counterstroke, the taint that doomed the world. Because of him. Because in his pride he had believed that men could match the Creator. Good men, but the Creator had made and they had broken. In his pride he had believed. He drew on the true source deeply and still more deeply, like a man dying of thirst. Quickly he had drawn more of the one power than he could channel unaided. His skin felt as if it were aflame. Straining, he forced himself to draw more, tried to draw it all. Light, forgive me, Ilyena! The air turned to fire, the fire to light, liquefied. The bolt that struck from the heavens would have seared and blinded any eye that glimpsed it, even for an instant. From the heavens it came, blazed through Luz, Theron, Thelamon, bored into the bowels of the earth. Stone turned to vapor at its touch. The earth thrashed and quivered like a living thing in agony. Only a heartbeat did the shining bar exist, connecting ground and sky, but even after it vanished, the earth yet heaved like the sea in a storm. Molten rock, fountain 500 feet into the air, and the groaning ground rose, thrusting the burning spray ever upward, ever higher. From north and south, from east and west, the wind howled in, snapping trees like twigs, shrieking and blowing as if to aid the growing mountain ever skyward. Ever skyward. At last the wind died. The earth stilled to trembling mutters. Of Luz, Theron, Thelamon, no sign remained. Where he had stood, a mountain now rose miles into the sky, molten lava still gushing from its broken peak. The broad, straight river had been pushed into a curve away from the mountain, and there it split to form a long island in its midst. The shadow of the mountain almost reached the island. It lay dark across the land like the ominous hand of prophecy. For a time, the dull, protesting rumbles of the earth were the only sound. On the island, the air shimmered and coalesced. The black-clad man stood staring at the fiery mountain rising out of the plain, his face twisted in rage and contempt. "You cannot escape so easily, dragon. It is not done between us. It will not be done until the end of time." Then he was gone, and the mountain and the island stood alone, waiting.
Ooh, nice quote, my man.
Oh man, it was fun to make. So this prologue was effective. I thought it was so amazing when I first read it. I mean, I have criticisms about it, but I remember feeling like I'm settling into a race car and I'm getting ready for a race. It was so grand, the powers that were being exhibited.
I think my favorite line in your reread was, "The earth thrashed and quivered like a living thing in agony." And holy cow, imagine that. If you have just, I mean, I don't want to get graphic on anything, but just a living thing in agony and having the earth twitching and to a wound like that is really fantastic imagery.
Yeah. And so, what do we know as a reader? We know that there is a character named Luz Theron Telamond. We know that there's a bad guy, and we know that there's dead people. And we know that we're in a physical world that went from a kind of a castle, you imagine, the way it was described, to an open field. That's really all we know. We know that it was 100 miles away. So this world is at
Well,
least 100
no,
miles.
there's a bit more that we're given.
We're given
From
time.
Elon. No, from Ilan Morin, we're given that there is a great Lord of the Dark, that this power has the ability to raise the dead, as he offered to raise Ilyena Sunhair back from the dead if he were to succumb to the Dark One and succumb to Ilan. We've learned that there is a cycle that is happening when he says, "You and I have fought 1,000 battles with the turning of the wheel, 1,000 times a thousand, and we will fight until time dies and the shadow is triumphant." So we do get some backstory, but this is a very typical prologue of a fantasy or sci-fi series that gives you some sort of esoteric background that really isn't defined, doesn't really spend its time trying to define these terms. You'll find out later that Rafa, read and find out. What we have is essentially a very wonderful little fantasy prologue that doesn't give you a whole lot as far as user-friendly things. It kind of gives you things that more in retrospect it lets you go, oh, I see. And that's stuff that we'll talk about later in this read. But all we need to know about this is that we've learned about a man named Luce Theron. We've learned about the betrayer of hope named Ilan Morin. They have a history and they assume to have a future. And this was the creation of Dragonmount by the Kinslayer.
That was an excellent recap, Dan. Excellent recap. Set aside time for a quick ad read. All right, Dan.
There's no ads this week except for a PSA for everyone to wash your hands.
Okay, good. Yeah. Stop touching my face. Everyone, please stop touching my face.
And I love you and I'm proud of you.
All right. Well, maybe next week, guys. Ads next week. Keep it in mind.
Keep it in mind. All right. Keep our ads in mind. I guess we were just advised, right? I can't wait. I can't wait to keep our ads in mind.
What we're going to go into next is the Tavern Talk. And we are saying goodbye to our first time readers. The music that you've heard on this podcast comes to you by Homunculus Rex. We also have music by Luke Dahl and music by Orlox. And all of those can be found on SoundCloud.
And the people that are leaving now and want to read with us or read along without spoilers, we'll be chapter 1, An Empty Road, next time we talk. Tavern Talk, Tavern Talk, Tavern Talk, Tavern Talk.
I think it sets the mood. I'm chilling. All right. I'm looking around. I see old, gnarled wooden tables. I see serving, I'm not going to say wenches, women and men.
Serving persons that deserve autonomy and can make their own choices as far as their gender.
Non-binary servers, men, women, menches and wenches. I'm seeing big mugs, no glass, maybe hay strewn about on the ground. Picture it in your mind. Maybe different, color with different drapes if you want.
Okay, yeah. We're hearing a clinking of pewter. We're hearing a murmured talk, tin flute in the corner. All right, so here's how I'm picturing Tavern Talk. Now, I'm probably dating myself, but I remember growing up, there's a movie called The Cannonball Run. Cannonball Run had a who's who, a greatest hits of people. But the funniest part of it was the end during the credits, in which you see a drunken Burt Reynolds really smack the crap out of Don DeLuise. Or you see Dean Martin drunkenly hit on Adrienne Barbeau. Or you have Jackie Chan, I don't know, just being a part of all the glory and the greatness. Roger Moore was in it. Remember Roger Moore? He was like James Bond at the time. It was so what I'm thinking that the Tavern Talk is kind of like the Cannonball Run of podcast, where at the end we already ran the credits. We're like we have the credits going, and then you're seeing clips, and I'm pulling a mustache hair out of Dom DeLuise's face because he upset me, and I'm slapping him twice in front of all these famous people. It's a power move, Ryan. I'm sorry if you're a part of that. Wait, what are you wearing right now, Ryan? What are you wearing right now?
Dan, this is not fair. We did not plan this. Dan is inappropriately bringing up Cannonball Run. I don't. We're gonna have a talk about this later. I'm a known Cannonball Run cosplayer. Currently, don't fit into my jumpsuit, my Don DeLuise Cannonball Run jumpsuit, and it's really a sore spot for me, and so I'm upset. But I'm gonna roll with it. Yes, yeah, sure. Cannonball Run, Tavern Talk. I'm down with it. Think about it. So we're gonna go with
I
Cannonball
told you
Run.
before,
If
and
you're
I'll
gonna
say
bring
it
up,
again. Jackie Chan, besides Karate Kid 2, greatest movie ever. Fight me.
no, hands down. There's no argument here. No argument. Although Tavern Talk will be rife with argument.
Anyone
No
who has a
argument here.
disagreement, by all means, go ahead and send that to @Ryan at Way of the Leaf or @Ryan at the Way of the Leaf. I don't. What's
Do you
your
think
email
Jackie
address?
Chan? What's our no? We are at Ryan. No, we don't. I was too busy. I was too busy thinking of my next joke to really follow that. So yeah, are we inventing an email address right
We'll get
now?
better. We'll get
Yes.
better, guys. But @Ryan.
Hashtag Ryan.
Anyway.
Just hashtag Ryan, the internet. I'll find it. Tavern Talk. Prologue. First prologue I've ever read. And it's, I think, of course, a great one. And it's a great introduction to a great series. But boy, I first started reading this series with a different mind than I am reading it now. And I think that's what is interesting to me and what I think is kind of what I started talking about earlier and I want to get at now. I did not know how to read fantasy when I first started. I read fantasy like a literature major would read a book. Read just for different reasons. And when I got this book, I continued just to read it like I read all my other books. And to its credit, it held up. Even I didn't consider it like amazing writing and compared to like the literature greats that I love, but it held up. Now, fast forward. During this reread, I personally really dive into this. There are connections, foreshadowing, all the different nuances and subtleties that I did not pick up at all. I'm going to be picking up and we're going to be talking about it.
I'm kind of in the same boat in that I'd read The Wheel of Time before I read Game of Thrones. And as I've been reading the Song of Ice and Fire and got kind of heavily into
Yeah, you
the
did.
online
Yes, you did.
evaluations and whatnot, that kind of taught me a bit on what I was missing when I was reading things. So with this reread, I think that I'm coming into it with a far more open eye to foreshadowing, to symbology, and to not like the obvious events, but just the subtle things that hopefully I'm able to pick up on this reread that I didn't notice at all. And I mentioned I read first 7 or 8 books straight through. And so I know that there's events that happen in these books that I don't quite remember which book it happened. They all became one big awesome book, and until I had to start waiting for them.
As I'm going back through, I've read, actually I'm listening. I'm going to be transparent. I'm re-listening. So I listened to the first book and then I'm in the second book, and there are events that if you asked me before I even started this, if you asked me when did Perrin meet Fail, I would have said book 4 or 5. I wouldn't have. I would not have remembered that they met in book 2, and that she just spied onto him and jumped on a boat all willy-nilly and just latched onto him because she was hunting the Horn of Illyr and she thought maybe he was onto something.
Well, I don't like Fail anymore, but I liked her when her band was
Fail
was Mandarb. No, it was Mandarb.
Oh, yeah.
I like her early stuff, but I don't really like her later stuff.
There's a lot of Fail hate. I just got a text from a friend who's going through a reread with us, and he very much said I forgot how much I hated
We'll get
Fail.
into that, I think, but I'm preparing to try to defend Fail. I think that she is not a victim, but a product of her society, and I think that when she has to learn, she does. Like when Perrin shows up back at the Two Rivers and knows that his whole family was destroyed and whatnot. I think that's when we see her drop all that pretense and be like, "Come here, baby," kind of thing. So I'm trying to keep an open mind to everything.
I am gonna have an open mind. Also, and I remember this when I first read this, I was rolling my eyes as this bad guy with the crazy on the nose, just completely on the nose outfit comes out and just starts having expository passages where he's just going, and we've met before, and oh, I could heal you this way, but now I'm going to heal you this other way. And he starts explaining everything to him as all this, apparently everything's supposed to be falling apart around them. I remember rolling my eyes going, God dang, this is a really bad trope. And I think it still is. Upon reread, I said, wow, he is just really, it's not a lot of effort in trying to get this information out to us in any like subtle way. It's just a guy talking to another guy and explaining all of his motivations, all of his plans, and everything he thinks is going to happen, going
It
forward.
does
I
have
just
a
thought that was really
Batman
fun.
theme or a feel where it's like,
yeah.
listen, Cape Crusader, as you sit here, I'm going to go over to 2 doors down and to the left, go down about a half mile, turn right at this spike at the wall, and then go down about 6 doors to the red door, and then I'm going to steal the. Yeah, and he's like, oh, great, the Scarecrow's doing, and he break. And I assume that the thing that I've rigged is going to kill you, so peace out.
Yeah, and no one can get out of this hand tie. We use just rope to tie your hands, even though we have a complicated mechanism of swinging like axes coming down to your heads. You're only tied by rope. Now go.
I'm laughing as I see you struggle. Your struggle must be futile, I'm sure. Bye. So
trope, yeah. So
there's trouble alert. But we do have a very well dressed man who has a lot of respect for Luz Theron and makes it so he sees that he killed these people, and he's like, "What? Pew!" and just bones out. I kind of love that he just bolts. I think that's how I would respond if I was Luz Theron as well. I'd be like, looking around and you see this dude that you've been fighting all this time, like laughing at you. I would just be like, pew, bye, pew, and just shoot somewhere. And then I don't know if I would necessarily make a mountain out of myself because I am a molehill. Yeah. Wait, Ryan. I'm sorry. I'm gonna need you to get that drum machine, that drum. All right. I wouldn't necessarily make a mountain out of myself because I am a molehill.
Badoomch.
No, where is it?
I lost it. We'll talk about that.
Oh no!
This is an issue. We'll talk about it. It's an issue.
Fix it in post.
I think I did great with my mouth. I'm a beatboxer. You haven't heard my beatbox where I do Don DeLuise laugh?
All right, we're off rails. Anyways.
One of the things that we've figured out that is going to help me as a reader, because I don't know how to read fantasy, we've called upon an expert, a historian, an expert in history. Although he'll tell you he's not a historian.
I appreciate the correction.
Well, he jumped the gun, but yeah, like that voice we all know and love, that is the inimitable, although we are inimitable him right now. Jesus Christ.
Well said.
I'm just so excited. I'm so excited, Mr. Carlin.
All right, hey, get out. Hey, grab your shoes, grab your bootstraps, and pick yourself up.
What's the opposite of inimitable?
Joyful.
we have the one and only Mr. Dan Carlin, podcaster, historian.
Hey, thanks, fellas. I appreciate the applause. Hey, Ryan, how you doing? It's been a good minute or two since I last talked to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I think this episode is going stupendously. Yes.
Stupendous.
And I'm really great.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
I'm just grateful. I don't know how to explain it. I'm just so grateful. I'm happy to announce to the listeners that you have agreed to be with us the entire run of this podcast. Yes, everybody. Dan Carlin has agreed to be with us. He's going to make an appearance, hopefully every episode.
It's like every time I try to get out, you pull me back in.
Yep. But right now we are not using our hands.
Please wash your hands when you pull me back in. Fellas, I want to talk a bit today about this period of time that's in the prologue. The end of the Age of Legends, the creation of Dragonmount, and the death of the dragon, Leafthare and Telamon. This time is called the Breaking of the World, and it begins with the Dark One's counterstroke upon Sidene, the male half of the One Power. Leafthare and his 100, they're called the 100 Companions. There was actually 113. Colloquially, they're referred to as the Companions, 100 Companions. They traveled to Shio Ghul to reseal the Boar and whatever power that held the Dark One back into his prison. They succeeded, but not before the Dark One tainted Sidene. And this caused Leafthare and Telamon and his, again, it's the 100 Companions, but it actually was whittled down to 68 by the time they sealed the Boar. It caused Leafthare and all his companions to go instantly stark raving mad. The scene that we read in Dragonmount is, I'm not really sure how much further beyond that point it is. It could be minutes or it could be hours. We just don't know. But we can assume that the madness occurs. Leafthare travels to his palace and then kills everyone he knows, his servants, his friends, his wife, and his children. Ilan Morin Tetranai. And I'm going to, from here on out, call him Ilan Morin. But he did earn 3 names, and that should be at least acknowledged. Ilan Morin calls him Kinslayer, and that's kind of the worst thing that you can be called when you're surrounded by your dead family. But there you are. Ilan Morin even tells Leafthare in this prologue about the beginning of this destruction by his companions, saying, quote, "Remember, even now the 100 Companions are tearing the world apart. In each day 100 men more join them." End quote. Now this is the true breaking of the world, not the creation of Dragonmount, impressive that is, or the death of the dragon, Leafthare and Telamon. The destruction went on for about 3 centuries, when all the male Aes Sedai spread across the land, spreading their madness. This is called the Time of Madness, and its end heralded the turn of the wheel to the Third Age. During this time, the female Aes Sedai, they hunted out their insane male counterparts. Now, all of them were afflicted by what's called the Taint. This is the Dark One's counterstroke upon Sidene. And as they hunted them, they stilled them. This was a process that was not a comfortable process for any of these male channelers, to say the least. Many of them died in the process, and if they didn't, well, they were just withered husks of what they once were. But you really need to imagine the destruction that was going on at this time. Dragonmount was created by one man. Now times that by 1,000. All insane. All being able to wield this power. Entire landscapes had completely changed. Oceans moved. Continents warped, stretched, shrunk, and then changed. Entire mountain ranges formed overnight. Well, Tam and Rand's Althor's farm, it was right in the foothills of the Sandhills, which were, we're told, once the shore of a great ocean. Now, when we search for any first-person accounts, beside the odd foretelling or two, I mean, we know the history that's involved on the large scale, but we don't have any real first-person accounts. It's one of the casualties of time. When entire nations were wiped out, well, there tends not to be much in terms of actual eyes on the ground testimonials. But for an example, there is a piece from a manuscript that is believed to have survived from the breaking. It reads, quote, "Whoever reads this, if any remain to read it, weep for us who have no more tears. Pray for us who are damned alive."
Wow. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. End quote. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
Mr. Carlin.
yes,
Basically,
yes.
so far, this all sounds like a shit show. All bad.
Oh, yeah, beyond you can believe. I mean, I'm having a hard time describing it.
You're doing a great job as always. But
I'm not a historian. I'm just a fan of history.
yeah, it's famously and historically accurate. Did anything good come from all of this?
Well, okay. So that's a good question. Thank you for asking it, Ryan. You're an insightful listener and a sound podcaster.
That sounds great.
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I mean, with any change, you either adapt and grow from the experience, or you regress and you die, I would assume. And if we looked at Alexander the Great, or even the battle of any of the World War I between Poland and Germany, we're going to see that same dynamic. Well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, there was some advantage to be made from this. Now, with the male Aes Sedai, they were running around destroying everything. And remember, Balefire not only destroys the recipient of the power, but it also tears at the pattern and erases him entirely from this weave. If you think of it as a quilt, and suddenly little pieces start getting erased from the weave, well, the entire blanket starts to lose some structural integrity now, doesn't it? And so the female channelers who were unaffected by this counterstroke had to organize to save the world, basically. The White Tower is a result of this. And after decades of infighting between various female Aes Sedai factions, the White Tower was created during this time to organize the female channelers against their male brethren. They named a leader who they called the Amarillan Seat, and it's unknown whether the throne on which she sits is named after her or she is named after the throne, but one and the same. They are both the Amarillan Seat, the leader and the throne. The Compact of the 10 Nations was signed, and this was the first known consolidation of the various lands in a collaboration rebuild after the breaking. During the breaking, the Stone of Tear was created to house valuable Angreal and Sa Angreal. And let me just say, if I'm mispronouncing that, let's just get used to that. My old tongue is rather sparse, and while I do what I can, well, you get the point. So valuable Angreal and Sa-Angreal were housed in the Stone of Terror to protect them against some rogue male Aes Sedai, including Kalensdor, the sword that is not a sword, which we will get into some other time. I mean, imagine if you add that element to the mix of the male challengers, Kalensdor, or any other one power item. Well, you're turning damage to an incremental level. It's like adding some sort of amplifier or subwoofer to a speaker system. I mean, suddenly it gets much louder and much more powerful. And that's what we're talking about here. Also, the city of Ruiden, located in the Io Waste, was created to stockpile many items of the one power safely. During this time, the Eye of the World was also created during this era. And I mean, just think of this. It was created to be located where and when the searcher has the most need. I mean, it boggles the mind. And when you think that Moraine Sedai actually visited it twice, well, I mean, that just wasn't supposed to happen. So, we have these things that were created. I shouldn't mention that the Ogier were a big part of this time, and we'll get into the Ogier culture a little bit later. The breaking lasted until the last known male channeler was killed, and this was, I mean, again, the time is a bit hard to pinpoint. They say between 244 and 356 years. So we all round to about 3 centuries of madness. Even now, the pattern will occasionally produce a man who can channel, and this has been the focus of the White Tower, especially the Raad Aja faction, to actively search these men out and still or kill them. There are more detailed stories about this time between the death of Lews Therin and the beginning of the Third Age regarding the Ogier, the Aiel, and prophecies of the dragon that have survived. But that's for another time, gentlemen. Okay, I gotta go.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. He
Wow. Hey,
is he gone?
yeah. Well, I went to use the restroom, and there was like I heard a, and like there was like a smoke, like a smoke trail out my door. My door's open, and leaves and papers are flying. I don't know what you did. Did you chase Dan Carlin out?
You do have a famously small bladder. Guys.
Can you wrap this up? I really gotta pee.
No, yeah, wrap it up. Wrap it up. All right, no, that was amazing. Mr. Carlin really broke it down for us.
He said he's gonna be here, but he's in and out. I mean, it's weird. We could have anyone else. He tells me he's not a visitor, but he's a fan of visiting.
Okay.
So
okay,
he's not a contributor, but he's a fan of contributing. So I'm not really sure if he's in for the long haul. We're gonna have to see. I'm sure he would love to hear some feedback.
Let's get into it about the television show coming up on Amazon. The show's gonna come out. We're gonna talk about it. Truly, I am excited. I'm worried and excited at the same time. I do hope they do a good job. I do hope they do a reverent job.
Well, I have high hopes. I think that this person is a big fan. He's been working with them. He's casting. I like that Logain is a pretty bigger actor, which means that he's going to have a bigger role. I like the money that they're putting into it. I like that I've seen pictures of Edmonds Field online, and it looks.
God, that made me so excited.
It looks great.
That made me very, very, very.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see how they portray Beltane and how they have the attack of the Trollocs and all that. But we'll probably talk about that more in the next couple episodes. But that's stuff that I really can't wait to see. I can't wait to see Tam kicking some ass. I was rereading, and he jumps through a window while the house is on fire, and instead of running away, he runs back through the back to go get more. And I'm like, Tam is going to be a fantastic character.
I've prepared a quote for you that comes from the prologue of the next book, and it is uplifting, and we're going to end this on a positive note. And it shall come to pass that what men made shall be shattered, and the shadow shall lie across the pattern of the age, and the dark one shall once more lay his hand upon the world of man. Women shall weep and men quail as the nations of the earth are rent like rotting cloth. Neither shall anything stand nor abide, yet one shall be born to face the shadow, born once more as he was born before, and shall be born again, time without end. The shadow shall be reborn, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth at his rebirth. In sackcloth and ashes shall he clothe the people, and he shall break the world again by his coming, tearing apart all ties that bind. Like the unfettered dawn shall he blind us and burn us, yet shall the dragon reborn confront the shadow at the last battle, and his blood shall give us the light. Let tears flow, O ye people of the world, weep for your salvation. Oh. I said it was uplifting. I meant it. That's how Robert Jordan writes.
Yeah, please define uplifting for me, please. Weep for us.
that is grim.
And that's from the Carathian cycle?
Thank you. Carathian cycle. Interestingly enough, it is said to be written in the 4th age, and the current story is said to be occurring in the 3rd age. And I hope one of the mysteries we solve is what is up
we
with
should
this 4th
explore
age.
that, because Luz Theron is in the 2nd age, and apparently you and I and everyone listening are living in the 1st age.
Yes. Right now, the tavern is closing.
Bye guys. See you next week.
Excellent.
Bye.
All right, everybody. It has been an amazing pleasure. This is going to be a journey. You guys can follow along with us. We truly hope you do. As we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that we have musicians that we're working with who are supporting this podcast. The opening theme song is called Cell Tower or Tree by Homunculus Rex. Homunculus Rex can be found on SoundCloud. This song we're listening to now is called Go There by Luke Dahl, remixed by Orlox. Both artists can be found on SoundCloud. And we thank them very much for helping us out. You can find us in all the typical socials. We'll be on Twitter, Facebook. Please like and subscribe. Anybody who has wherewithal can give us a 5-star review. That's amazing. iTunes, Stitcher. That helps pop our little podcast up in the feed and helps get us a little bit of exposure. So it's kind of your way of helping out a cottage industry. And this is what this is. This is our cottage industry, our side hustle. This is our hobby, passion project, Squarespace, wink, wink. This is our passion project. We want to say goodbye. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all for listening very much. We hope that you're going to join us next time. We're going to be dealing with Chapter 1, An Empty Road. Until then, check out all the musicians on SoundCloud. And if you have any questions or any suggestions, we're open to each and every one of them. So send them our way.
We will be reading your guys' emails and reviews. Well, this is a creative, co-created process. This is a community we're developing.
Yes, a community.
We'd love to see your art. We want to see your art. We want to hear your bands. If you have songs about Wheel of Time, please send it our way.
Even if you know what, even if they're not Wheel of Time related, but you just want us to hear your stuff, yeah, send it us.
Yeah.
Hey, we're sending our stuff to you. You send your stuff to us. That's cool too, man.
Again, we are The Way of the Leaf. This is the LeafCast. signing out.
May you always find water and shade, my people.
Running his hip game. Running his hip game. Let me just finish here. You see, a pinslove is very different from that of a square. Collins. Fine. We'll move on. It is a fascinating world, though.